The wind rushed through the tall oak trees of Central Park, New York, scattering the last golden leaves of autumn across the walking path. A little girl with chestnut brown hair sat silently on a wooden bench, hugging a worn-out teddy bear. Beside her, her father, a tired but dignified man with a fading military haircut, rested his head in his palms. His name was Ethan Walker, a decorated Army veteran, and a single dad trying to rebuild a life that kept breaking beneath his feet. He didn't come to the park for peace, he came because it was the only place that didn't feel like it was turning its back on him. "Daddy, will we have a car again someday?" His daughter, Lily Walker, 6 years old, lifted her eyes toward him. Ethan swallowed a deep ache. "One day, sweetheart. I promise." But promises were all he had left. The job he was promised after deployment had been given to someone else. His medals didn't pay rent, honor didn't buy groceries, and no one cared how many sleepless nights he fought through in silence. New York was beautiful, the skyline was breathtaking, but to Ethan it felt like a city always moving forward while he stayed stuck in place. For weeks he searched for used cars, anything affordable, but taxis were swallowing what little money he had saved. Lily's school was too far to walk in winter. The cold had already arrived, earlier than expected, creeping into their small rented room and into his bones. So today, with the last of his pride folded inside his jacket pocket, he walked into Bennett Luxury Motors, one of the most famous dealerships near Times Square, hoping for a second-hand financing plan or at least a fair installment option. Instead, humiliation greeted him first. Behind the polished glass doors stood Richard Hale, the dealership manager, sharp suit, stiff smile, and a colder heart than the temperature outside. The moment Ethan mentioned low budget and veteran financing, Richard's expression shifted, no gratitude, no respect, only judgment. "You people always come here thinking we're a charity," Richard scoffed loudly in front of other customers. "If you can't afford gas money, don't waste my time looking at luxury cars." Lily clung to her father's coat. Ethan closed his eyes, gathering the last of his dignity. "I wasn't asking for charity," he said quietly. "Just fairness." "Then be fair to yourself," Richard sneered, pointing toward the door. "Leave before I call security." Right there, in the middle of that $1 million showroom, under the glow of chandeliers and the reflection of imported chrome hoods, Ethan Walker, a man who once stood fearless in war zones, was being thrown out like he was nothing. Customers stared but no one stepped forward. He turned away slowly, guiding Lily out, each step heavier than the ground beneath him. Richard smirked, unaware that the man he just insulted was the same war hero who once dragged his elder brother, Major Lucas Bennett, out of a burning Humvee during a surprise enemy ambush overseas, a sacrifice that saved the life of the dealership's very owner, the man whose signature hangs on every wall in that building. But fate has a way of circling back. And humiliation has a habit of becoming a turning point. As Ethan stepped outside, the cold December wind cut through him, but something deeper burned in his chest, the ache of being forgotten by the same country he bled for. He didn't know that destiny was already waiting around the corner. Waiting to unfold his story in a way that would shake the entire dealership, and the arrogant manager who pushed him out. The sky above Times Square was glowing with giant billboards, but Ethan didn't see the lights, he only felt the weight of defeat pressing into his chest. He walked slowly, holding Lily's tiny hand as they made their way toward the bus stop. The sidewalk shimmered with reflection from the city lights, but inside him, it felt like all those lights had gone dark. Lily peered up at him. "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" That single question, soft, innocent, trembling, hurt more than any battlefield injury he had ever survived. "No, sweetheart," he whispered, brushing her hair back gently. "People sometimes forget to be kind." She nodded silently, too young to understand, yet old enough to feel his pain. They reached the small coffee kiosk near the corner, where a familiar face appeared, Grace Mitchell, a warm-hearted barista who always smiled at Lily, even when she knew Ethan sometimes bought only one hot cocoa and split it between them. "Rough day?" she asked softly, sliding a small cup across the counter, "Extra whipped cream, no charge." "You could say that," Ethan replied with a tired smile. Grace didn't push for details. She could already read them in his eyes, the silent kind of suffering carried by men who have seen too much, given too much, and received too little in return. While Lily sipped cocoa, Ethan's mind drifted back, to the desert heat, the sandstorm, the explosion. Flashback, a burning night in Afghanistan. Screams. Fire. Gunshots tearing through the night. Ethan was running, dragging another soldier by the vest across rough gravel, blood mixing with dust. The Humvee behind them was engulfed in flames. The enemy had struck out of nowhere, and everything was chaos. The man on his shoulder was barely conscious, Major Lucas Bennett, son of billionaire car tycoon Charles Bennett, and heir to the very dealership that had just thrown Ethan into the street. "Leave me, go." Major Bennett had choked through the smoke. "Not happening," Ethan growled, refusing to let go. Rounds cracked past his head. The air reeked of burning fuel and blood, but Ethan didn't stop. He shielded the officer's body with his own, tightening his grip until the rescue convoy finally reached sweeping distance. That night should have killed them both. Instead, it tied them together, hero and heir, though only one of them would. A gust of icy Manhattan wind yanked him back to the present. Grace noticed the distant look in his eyes. "You ever think about doing security work? Ex-military gets hired quickly around here." Ethan exhaled. "I've tried. They all want experience with recommendation letters from New York employers. But I spent my last decade defending this country overseas, not shaking hands in an office." Grace's eyes softened. "Some people don't understand sacrifice until it touches their own doorstep." He nodded silently. But fate was listening. Just across the street, unseen by Ethan, a sleek black SUV slowly pulled into the dealership driveway. And stepping out of it was Charles Bennett himself, the powerful, well-respected owner. A man whose life still existed because Ethan didn't let go during war. And soon, his path and Ethan's would cross in a way that would turn shame into revelation, and humiliation into honor. Because the man Richard Hale kicked out was not just another poor father. He was the reason the Bennett family still has a son. And destiny was now preparing to reveal it. The morning sun reflected off the glass towers of Fifth Avenue, painting the streets with golden streaks. Ethan Walker pushed the stroller-like cart of his shopping, Lily skipped beside him, humming softly. They didn't know it yet, but the events of this day would change everything. Inside Bennett Luxury Motors, the atmosphere was all polished floors and shiny chrome, but tension simmered beneath the surface. Richard Hale, still feeling proud of himself from the previous day, was showing a prospective client a brand new black SUV. He barely noticed the SUV pulling up outside, sleek, black, and commanding, until the man stepping out of it turned the room silent. It was Charles Bennett, the owner himself. Tall, elegant, a presence that made everyone instinctively straighten their posture. His eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the showroom, landing on Richard, whose smirk faltered slightly. "Richard," Charles said slowly, his voice calm but carrying authority. "I want a word in private." Richard followed, sweating. He didn't know why the owner was serious. Meanwhile, Charles's gaze shifted subtly to the glass doors, where Ethan had just passed with Lily, clutching a small winter coat tighter against the cold. Something in that posture, the way Ethan carried himself despite exhaustion, tugged at a memory long buried. Charles's lips tightened, and suddenly, he remembered that night in Afghanistan, the burning Humvee, the chaos, and the man who risked everything to save Lucas Bennett, his son. "Wait," Charles murmured under his breath, a chill running through him. He rushed to the glass doors. "Stop right there." Ethan froze, Lily looking up at the commanding voice. Charles crossed the showroom floor rapidly, stopping a few feet away from them. "Ethan Walker," he said, voice trembling slightly. Ethan straightened, surprised and cautious. "Yes, sir?" Charles studied him, memories flashing through his mind. You were the one who saved Lucas in Afghanistan. You dragged him from the burning Humvee. That night." Ethan blinked. Shock crossed his face, and he glanced down at Lily, who was curious but silent. "Sir. I just did what anyone would do." "You saved my son's life," Charles said, emotion breaking through his composed exterior. "And here you are, thrown out of my dealership by my own manager?" Richard Hale's face turned crimson. He stammered, "Sir. I didn't know." Charles's glare froze him. "You didn't know," he repeated, voice low and deadly. "You kicked out a hero. A man who saved your boss's life, your family's life, because he didn't have enough money?" The words hung in the air like a storm. Other employees whispered. Customers turned to watch, sensing the unfolding drama. Ethan looked down, fighting tears, pride warring with relief. Charles knelt slightly to meet Lily's eyes. "And you must be Lily," he said softly. "Lucas's little hero's friend?" Lily's eyes widened. She smiled timidly. "Hi, sir." Charles chuckled, a warm sound. "No, you're the daughter of my hero. I owe you a lot too." He turned back to Ethan. "I want you back in this dealership, but not as a customer. I want you to work here. Anything you want. Security, management, I'll make sure you're treated with the honor you deserve." Richard Hale stammered, trying to intervene. "Sir, I can explain." Charles's voice cut him off like a whip. "No explanation. You will apologize. To Mr. Walker, publicly. And you will learn what respect truly means." The showroom fell silent. Ethan's chest tightened, but relief and vindication surged through him. He finally allowed himself a small smile. Lily clapped her hands quietly, proud of her dad. "You didn't just save my son," Charles said softly to Ethan. "You've saved this day too, because now, the world will know true courage isn't in medals or money. It's in actions, integrity, and heart." Ethan bowed slightly, feeling years of pain begin to lift. "Thank you, sir. I just wanted to provide for my daughter, to make life safe for her." Charles smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've done more than that. You've reminded all of us what real courage looks like." And for the first time in months, Ethan felt like he belonged, not because of money, not because of appearances, but because his heart had finally been recognized. The late afternoon sun dipped low over Brooklyn Bridge Park, painting the city skyline with warm hues of gold and rose. Ethan Walker and Lily strolled along the winding pathways, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant coffee shops. For the first time in months, Ethan felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. In his hands rested the keys to a modest but reliable SUV from Bennett Luxury Motors, a gift from Charles Bennett himself. It wasn't just a car, it was freedom, hope, and the beginning of a new chapter. Lily's laughter rang like music, chasing away the lingering shadows of hardship. "Daddy! Look at the ducks." Lily pointed to a small pond, where a family of mallards glided gracefully across the shimmering water. Ethan smiled, kneeling beside her. "Yes, sweetheart. Look at them, just enjoying the moment, like we will." That day at the dealership had changed everything. Richard Hale, humbled and embarrassed, had issued a public apology in front of the entire staff, learning a lesson in humility that would not soon be forgotten. Meanwhile, Ethan had been offered a permanent position managing the dealership's security and community relations program, a job that honored his service while giving him stability for Lily. As they walked, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought them here, nights of worry, days of struggle, moments of humiliation, and the countless sacrifices he had made as a father and a veteran. Yet each challenge had shaped him, teaching resilience, patience, and unwavering love. By the time the city lights flickered on, Ethan and Lily reached a quiet bench overlooking the East River. The skyline of Manhattan glimmered across the water, bridges arched gracefully, and the sound of distant traffic blended with the gentle lapping of waves. "Daddy. I like our new car," Lily said softly, resting her head against his shoulder. Ethan kissed the top of her head. "I like it too, pumpkin. But more than anything, I like knowing that no matter how hard life gets, we never give up." We keep going, together. In that moment, Ethan realized that true victory wasn't about wealth or recognition. It was about love, integrity, and standing up even when the world turned its back. He had been tested, humiliated, and overlooked, but his courage, humility, and heart had carried him through. Later that evening, back in their cozy apartment, Ethan opened a letter from Charles Bennett. It was a formal recognition of his bravery and service, along with a handwritten note. Ethan, you saved my son, you saved a life, and today you remind us all what true heroism is. Thank you. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. He folded the letter, holding it close, feeling pride not for himself, but for the promise he had fulfilled to his daughter, that love, courage, and goodness always find their way back. As night fell over New York City, the glow of street lamps reflected in puddles on the sidewalks, and Ethan and Lily gazed out at the twinkling skyline. It was a city full of challenges, full of struggles, but also full of hope. And hope, Ethan knew, was the kind of wealth that no one could ever take away. A message to you, the viewer. If Ethan and Lily's story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Comment below, share your thoughts, share this video with your friends, and let the world know that kindness, courage, and perseverance are worth celebrating. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, Kindness Quest, for more stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us all that even in the darkest moments, humanity can shine its brightest. Because in every challenge, in every struggle, there's a story waiting to remind us that courage, love, and goodness always find a way.